fueling for an Ironman is a challenging task and one that you need to get right if you want that personal best, as you obviously don't want to run out of energy midway through or waste too much time with several bathroom stops.
Yeah, the physiological demands of an Ironman are high and up there with being one of the most energy consuming things you could do in a single day. You could burn in excess of 8,000 calories, and to put that into some perspective, that is almost twice the amount of an average Tour de France rider in a single stage. So you're going to need to be prepared.
Yeah, you do. So how do you go about fueling for one? Well, I think it's a good place to start with chewing over the demands of an Ironman.
Way. The days leading up to a race are really important, and nutrition is something that athletes quite often overlook until the final day before a race or even the night before a race. But in fact, you should be thinking about your diet the week leading into a race or even the month leading into a race. You want to be aiming for a nice, consistent and healthy diet and staying hydrated well throughout. So to help you out here, actually just carrying a bottle around with you regularly and sipping from that could be of great use to you. And then in the final 4, maybe even to 10 days leading into the race, you want to start increasing your carbohydrate intake. This doesn't mean piling back bowls and bowls of pasta, but just maybe replacing the odd snack here and there with something with a little bit more carbohydrate in there. And whilst doing that, you're going into your taper, reducing the amount of volume and intensity that you're doing. This is all going to help in increasing the amount of glycogen store within your body and your muscles.
Swimmers will take around an hour, but you could be up to 2.5 hours on the swim portion, and due to the nature of swimming, you're not going to be able to take on any nutrition during. So in that case, it's essential that you make sure you fuel really well beforehand, and you also have a strategy to refuel as soon as you finish the swim. So talking of the pre-fueling, it's essential to have a carbohydrate-rich breakfast at least 90 minutes before your race, and due to race nerves, it's going to be hard to take on that adequate fueling. So make sure you've at least practiced this in training and it's food that you know you can easily digest.
Well, the bike ride is where a good fueling strategy can really make your race, but equally get it wrong and it can be really hard to recover from this. Now, again, we've got a common theme going on here. Stay on top of your hydration and your carbohydrate intake, but obviously this also comes down to experience and personal preference. Now, it's been shown that the best sources of carbohydrate for endurance, activity or exercise are in the form of energy drinks, energy gels, and solid energy bars. Now, in terms of ingestion rate of these carbohydrates, it's thought that between 60 to 90 grams of carbohydrate per hour are optimum. Now, that equates to one 500ml bottle of energy drink with about 60 to 80 grams of carbs in there. Normally about 2 to 3 of these sort of energy gels, and often about 3 energy bars, obviously all dependent on the brand. Now, what I would say is do have a look at the types of carbohydrates in these energy sources. Ideally, we're after a mix of glucose and fructose, and a lot of brands do this in a 2-to-1 ratio. But all of this does mean it's important that you go away and you trial out all these different types of nutrition to find out what's best for you, what you're comfortable with, what works, what doesn't work. Do this on long rides and some high intensity rides so you can arrive on race day feeling confident.
It's crunch time in an Ironman, and if you have got your fueling wrong, then you're going to be fighting a losing battle now. If, however, you're still on track, it's important to keep that concentration and make sure you carry on fueling, as you've still got several hours of racing left to go. So you want to aim to take on still 60 to 90 grams of carbohydrate if you can. And yes, it's still easy to physically eat when you're running, just like it is on the bike, but it becomes slightly harder to digest it, as your stomach's going to be jumping up and down, so it makes it much harder for it to digest. With that in mind, it does become essential that you practice this in training, as you find out the foods and the fluids that you can actually easily digest. And it's very tempting to go and do most of your training maybe feeling you don't need that fuel because you're not doing it after a long bike ride, but you still need to make sure that you practice so that come race day your stomach's used to it and you know what will work for you.
Now, some studies have shown that consuming around 6 milligrams of caffeine per kilogram of body weight, around 45 minutes to 60 minutes prior to a triathlon, can have a performance-enhancing effect. But I'm not so sure how much caffeine is going to help us on a long distance event such as an Ironman. It's not like we really need to be pumped and ready before such a long event. But where it could be useful is later on in the race when you start to get fatigued and maybe your mood isn't quite as high as it was at the start. And maybe that's where caffeine can give you that lift that's going to be really helpful. But again, this is where you want to try out in training and see if it works for you.
So what are the key points then? You've probably got the hint by now, I reckon. It's practice, practice, practice. Yes, there is no point in rocking up on race day and hoping that just any old nutrition plan is going to work for you. It is very personalised, so you need to experiment in training, find out what works and practice it a lot.
Yep, and it comes down to carbohydrates. Yeah, fueling during or even prior to a race comes down to carbohydrates, both before the race and making sure that we're storing those carbohydrates during the race and also making sure that our bodies can cope with that. Now, obviously, let's not forget proteins and fats. They are very important in the lead up to the race in our day-to-day training, but they are slower to break down than carbohydrates, which is why we often look towards carbohydrates during a race, because we want to get that energy quickly there and then.
Yeah, well, let us know how you get on in your next Ironman and how your fueling plan plans out in the comments section below, and give us a like and follow GTN whilst you're at it.